can you see what I'm sharing, first of all, before I start rambling on about what I have shared and you can't actually see it?
No, we can. Continue.
Yeah. Okay. So as Tariq says, we were faced already, and because I was kind of the one who started with this OneNote stuff initially about 3 years ago, and we were faced then with exactly the same problem that we have now with NFE, except at the time it was Cloud System Matrix. We had with Cloud System Matrix as a kind of solution or as a product suite, we had so many documents, both public and non-public, that we needed to be able to reference that it was virtually impossible, and I found it incredibly frustrating that a lot of the time I would actually ultimately I would find the answer or the reference to what I was looking for, but it took me, an hour of searching for the right doc to find it in, because there were so many white papers and, just research and testing that people had done, etc. So what started off with my way of organizing information for myself kind of grew with people looking over my shoulders and going, wow, how did you find that so quickly? And then we started sharing it within the team. And then at a certain point, we had the Matrix Masters in the field doing the Matrix installs that we work fairly closely with, who also said, well, how did you find that? Or were in the office and saw us using it. So we moved from it being my little science project to using it within the team, to then moving to a pilot for a year where we were replicating it out so that some of the Matrix Masters could use it as reference, as an actual reference body for them to use day to day. And that means that and then we took, a little over a year ago, we took the final step and kind of formalized having an HP IT file share where it gets replicated too, so anyone in HP, or HPE now, can access this library body and sync to it so that any changes that those who are maintaining it make in this space are replicated out daily to a file share that everyone in HPE can sync to. So that's been the case for a year now. So we've been doing that for anybody in HPE already for a year plus in the cloud space. Somewhere last year, Gerhard and I sat down, and Gerhard said, well, I really want to do the same thing for NFE and SDN. And let's kind of retwizzle the structure a little bit and the naming convention. So we have a specific NFE and SDN library that we create, the same as what you see here, TS Cloud CUE, Cloud System 8 library, which is what this will say if you do it full out, Cloud System 8 library. That's basically the structure. I'll get to show. Actually, I can give you the file share so anybody can immediately, or Gerhard or Uta, maybe you want to put the fileshares.corp.hp.com link into the chat. So if anybody wants to connect up and start loading up the NFE and the SDN one while we're looking at this, then they're able to. I'll take that silence as a sure. Great,
yep,
Colin.
Yep. No, give me a second here.
Okay, so just because some people are more visual, we have, this is our, just to show you, this is our local file server that we have in our lab. This is what we use as a master read-write copy. Every night there's a robo copy that does a delta of this to this TS Cloud CUE share. And you'll see that there's two shares for this. One is actually going directly to the building and server, and the other one is a fileshare.corp.hp.com/groups, etc. That file share one is, nope, not that one, Uta. That's our internal team one.
Okay.
The file shares here, I got it. I can type it off the top of my head. This one, file shares.corp.hp.com/groups/TS Cloud COE. That one. So the first one you won't be able to access because there's been a share set up, and that's the read-write one. The read-write one is controlled access to a small group of people. Right now, Tariq and Arun have write access to this one to be able to contribute to it. But because this is in our lab and we don't want half the world syncing to our lab, or we won't be able to connect to it ourselves, we've kind of tightly controlled the access to that. Exactly what's on this share is synced with Robocopy every night to the second link that I've put out there, the fileshare.corp.hp.com. And if you want to capture what's on my screen, this is simply, one is a vanity URL, which is a kind of forwarder, and the second one goes to, I'll just type it, groupshares.4202.bbn.hp.com/tscloudcoe. That's exactly the same share. One is just to a forwarder that works and kind of looks for your nearest place to connect to it, and the other one goes directly to where the actual file share is in my region, which is in EMEA. So if you're in EMEA, the group shares one makes sense because you're kind of connecting directly to the server. If not, then the filesharecorp.hp.com one is going to get you redirected there. So that's the back end of it. Any questions about that and the structure and the setup before I then walk you through what we've put into the OneNote and the thinking here? Nope. All right. So what you'll see, actually, if I go here back to this guy for a second and just show you what you see when you connect to this. Wow, that's fast. So once you're connected to it, you'll see a folder in here called OneNote COE Library. And in the OneNote COE Library, you'll see several folders in this structure. There's a README here. The README is basically documenting all the gotchas that I've found when you're connecting up a library. Things like the fact that OneNote stores by default both a local sync copy as well as 2 full backups of everything. So if you don't go change your settings and you go connecting to 20 gigs worth of OneNote library, then that 20 gig will turn into 60 gig on your hard drive. And if you were running into hard drive space troubles as it was, then you might not want to do that. So all of that's in the README. If you then go to, let's take the NFE library as an example. If you go to any of these, you double click on the folder. In the folder, you're going to find a file called OpenNotebook.1talk2. This OpenNotebook.1talk2 is basically then going to show you, you double click this and it opens the OneNote folder as you see it here. So I've already done that. So what you do is you map the drive to a drive letter so it's a consistent place, otherwise you end up loading the same notebook from 3 different drives and your local system thinks it's 3 different OneNotes and will keep a separate backup copy of all of them. So I've mapped this structurally as a drive, and then I've double-clicked the OneNote Open Notebook. When you do that, you end up with a bunch of libraries locally here on your system, and all of the ones that start off with TS Cloud COE or TS SDN COE are libraries that are copied out in this structure and are available to everybody on the remote system. So anybody in HPE can connect to them. So if I then go to the NFE, I'll first show you an example of one that's fairly mature, just so you can get the idea of this. So Matrix is a mature product and has a ton of stuff. So Matrix, if anybody here is familiar with Matrix from their past existence or any current work, then you know that you have these 4-digit versionings, and for each version they have their own set of docs, and each of those docs has unique configuration, unique qualification versions that are required, etc. So if you go back to, I don't know, pick something here, 7.3 or 7.2s, what you'll find here is the tabs are broken out, and this is just, I show this as an example of the structure that's kind of naturally evolved here. The tabs are broken out into hp.com and non-hp.com. hp.com means every document in this tab or section in OneNote terms, every document in here is a public document, which means that if you find something by searching through OneNote and go, there's the answer to my question, and you look and you see it's in an hp.com tab, you don't have to worry about it. It can immediately be shared with anybody customer, etc. You don't have to wonder where. We've gotten into the convention of any document that we put into OneNote is basically a print of the entire document. That print of the entire document then shows up here as a print. That's how OneNote works. So if you say, I'm going to print to, and I can take let me just take a random PDF here from my local system, and I'll show you that in a second. But if you say print to OneNote, it'll open up a dialog for printing, and then you say, I want to print, and the way that it prints is it prints it as an image. And the real powerful part of this whole OneNote story is it then does OCR over the entire thing. So if you search OneNote, you find text in anything that's been printed in here, even if it's in a diagram or an image of some kind in OneNote, which means anytime I'm looking for something, you see one of my last searches here was GWLM. This was actually a support-related question about GWLM, and it shows me everything that's searched in GWLM. If I say, actually, I want to know about GWLM specifically for this customer, is using it with 7.2. whatever, then you go to that tab, you type your search string, and you pull this arrow down and say, search this section. And then you find it specifically references related to the 7.2 version that you're looking at.
Yeah, which is really neat, because sometimes you only have a diagram that references a certain keyword, and that's what you're looking for, yeah.
Exactly. So the next tab here, again, I used the Matrix example, is Matrix had several internal release notifications. The only way they went out was, speaking of organizing information, was via a PDL. So if you weren't on the Matrix Field Support PDL, you just didn't get this stuff, and if you didn't find some way of organizing it, you ended up searching all of your email all the time in order to figure out what the current release information was. So this structure continues, and if you see here 7.5hp.com, the other kind of really powerful part of this is that you have the reference here to the public docs, and then you have the Insight Management docs, Mo docs. I'm on the public documentation here. We've used the naming convention, release notes, user guide, etc. for these things, and you can indent pages so that you can say, you actually break it into some kind of a logical section by taking each of these pages and just dragging it left to right like this, and then it's indented as a subpage. We've also gotten into the habit of putting the link to the source file in here so that we're not emailing PDFs around. If you do find something, you just have to click the link, make sure it's still valid, and then you can share the link in your response to someone saying, it's in the Mo 7.5 Getting Started guide. Here's the link to it, and it's on page 64, whatever it is that you found. We've then started adding, and I'll switch to a Cloud System 8 one, just as something more current. So Cloud System 8, we then started moving to having a COE how-to HP internal, because it's all nice and dandy that you have public docs, and you find a lot of things in the public documentation. You find some things in kind of these internal SIGs or other installation guides that are related to the product but are not available to the public. But then you find all kinds of things that we've kind of learned on the way ourselves. And learned on the way ourselves, we've written into here to say, okay, this is how you enable debugging on this thing. This is how you set up passwordless SSH for Nova. This is how you, and all of these pages basically start their life in our case, they start their life in a COE internal space where we're using as a team, as a scratch space for everything. And then when we think, oh, those instructions are solid enough, we've tried them twice, someone else tried them and verified that they actually work outside of my own brain, then we copy that page and we kind of publish it to the HP internal, or sorry, the COE how-to internal page in here. By using this naming convention kind of structurally of HP.com versus not having HP.com, which means it's not publicly available, versus our kind of internal how-tos, that means that if you use this consistently across Matrix and Cloud System 8 and the NFV pages, then you really get let's say a consumer experience as you're consuming information from this, which becomes very, very, very fast. So you say, oh, I'm looking for, I don't know, pick anything, and you search for it. It's never easy to pick something out of the blue and go search for it. But if you go here, NFV, library, and you take a look at this. So the NFV library is not as mature as the other libraries, but it's something that Gerhard took basically at a first swing at, and then Tariq has been in here the past week or so adding content to this. The idea is the same, that we work on some kind of a logical structure, internal resources, external resources, NFV director. We've put in here this how to add content. This is also, there's some tricks to being able to print a 400-page PDF. If you don't change your settings, it will print it on 400 subpages. So there's some how to add things in here which are done, and that allows you to kind of go and let me pick something here that you can embed Excel sheets. This is really what's powerful about this. You can embed pretty much anything, and then it becomes searchable. It's, let's say, certainly all of the Word and Excel and PowerPoint stuff that we have out there is all Microsoft products that are built to be embedded in here. So white papers, Wind River white papers. So what this starts to become, and what we've seen it become in the cloud system and the matrix space and the other products that we do in the COE, is we've seen this become kind of we as a group kind of keep track of what we're looking for, and you look here first. And if you don't find it here, then you look, where is it on hp.com? Where is it on that SharePoint where we're putting that stuff? Or whatever that group, or engineering group, or whoever has decided that they're spreading their information with. So you can go look for it, find it, and then get into the habit of basically printing it into here right away if you're one of the people administering this. And if not, you flag it to the person who is administering that particular library to say this needs to be in there. And flagging it to them is as easy as print it. In our case, in our team, we have a COE internal, and our whole team has access to this, and then we have a for library tab in here where you basically say, yeah, I want this to be in the library. So you go create a page, put it in the library, and then ping me on link and say, hey, Colin, you were missing the HOS or the HOS 2.0 stuff that came out, or carrier grade specifically, or if you're talking about NFV system 2.0 stuff just came out, and I've printed it onto 5 pages here. Could you move it into the library? So that's how we do it within our team. That won't work necessarily for this group because you don't have a COE internal, but the same. There are other ways to create the same. You could even create something in here where you had a separate tab where everybody had write access to, for example. So I think I'm going to stop there for a second. I could ramble on for a long time about this, but the last thing I'll say first, at risk of overwhelming, is what we've actually, in the past 6 months, we've taken another shift with this whole exercise where we didn't, oftentimes, because this is, this cloud system and NFV and SDN space is not high volumes. Oftentimes what we found was it wasn't necessarily in the docs, it wasn't necessarily something that was already in OneNote, but we found after a week of looking at it and raising it to one of the senior people on the team that you would see that someone else was actually already working on pretty much the same thing for a couple of weeks. You just didn't know it of one another. So the latest natural shift, if you wish, that we've made is to go to the COE internal. And in the COE internal, we have a tab here called Per Engineer. And in the Per Engineer, we have basically pick an engineer, and whatever you're working on, we've started working on in here. So everybody does it slightly differently, and this is where you move from the structured data, if you wish, of the library content to the unstructured data of what people do day to day, and the fact that everyone has a slightly different way of doing it. But fundamentally, we all work from some kind of a scratch space. And whether that's Notepad++ or it's physical Notepad with pen and paper is going to be kind of tough to make searchable. But if you're doing it electronically anyway and have made that shift, then it's very easy to shift into putting it into here. I don't know, Uta's stuff that Uta's been working on in here as well, right? And various things that, whatever it is that you're organizing. So, this is something that I was looking at here. Whatever it is that you're working on, if you work on it in here as your scratch space and kind of let go of my scratch space has to be my private thing. Otherwise, people will see that I don't know everything. Because you know what, in the solution space, there's no way we know everything. So we've, as a team, and it's been it's been an interesting shift. As a team, we've shifted over the past 6 to 9 months to doing pretty much everything that we do, and some people more than others, but pretty much everything we do in here. Which means that now, if I get a question in on, I don't know, I know something I was looking for recently was resizing instances and what the support stance was on that with Cloud System 8 versus 9. I actually found a couple of cases where there were other people looking into that for cases, and was able to reach out to people and say, in one case, what I found helped me because someone had found or tested something and just documented what they tested. And in another case, I had an authoritative answer to give to somebody to say, hey, this has actually changed slightly, and this is the answer to it, based upon the fact that I knew that they were working on it. And if we hadn't been doing this together, then I would have had no idea. That's it for now. I will take a break and open to questions, comments.
So maybe I'll ask a question to the team. For folks who are attending, did anyone actually click on the links that Colin put in and was able to go and open OneNote?
Yeah, this is Subbu. I actually tried. It's taking a lot of time. Is it natural to for it to take a lot of time loading, or is just
yeah?
So the
first time. Because what you're doing is you're basically pulling down this thing of, and this is, once it's synced once, then you'll end up, if you look at all of these, you see this kind of green arrow here showing sync status, right? And my sync status is good. So once you've synced everything, then you can show the sync notebook status, and what it does is it syncs automatically. Every time you're connected and there's a change, it only does the changes. So it's very fast, and basically your search and the speed, I can't stress the speed enough. Once this is kind of gotten through its initial sync operation with everything, the speed is mind-numbing. I've had a bit of a bug up my butt for a few years now about being able to organize and find information, and I've tried everything from just fundamental desktop search in Windows to searching because desktop search used to include your mail back in Office 2013 and Outlook 2013, or sorry, 2010. 2013, the searching of Outlook became a separate thing, and that became a bit of a pain, so you had to look differently. I looked at, I use MOBA Xterm in order to use Linux search command line tools to search my local desktop, because MOBA Xterm by default will mount all of your local drives. I've had some success with that in searching things like support dumps that don't have extensions, which are thus not indexed by Windows, but it's just none of them are organized enough or fast enough. And what you find here is if you look for, I don't know, it's anybody got a random search term that they want to try?
Yeah. Let's, the Subbu and team are working on DCN 32R4. So, Subbu, what was the latest problem you had? Let's say ML2 plugin within DCN 3.2R4.
My thing just got loaded up, so. Okay.
Yeah. And
So I'll show you things like if you're looking in here, Microsoft is sometimes too intelligent on you. So if you look for things like 3.2.4, it looks at those independently. So if you're going to search for something which has dashes or hyphens or spaces, you have to put it in quotes up here. And then if you say DCN, then it's always the 3.2.R4 release notes, right?
Yeah.
No, it's 3.2R4. You have to say Romeo 4. Yeah.
Yep. No, I see it here as soon as I do the 3.2. But just as an indication, you see that, and then if I go, I wonder if that's what it is. Oh, that's the release notes, right? And this is exactly the structure that we're after, that you have a link to it. So if you find something in the release notes, you can take a quick screenshot of it. But what I tend to do, I'll show you. Then you have the FAQ, right? and then you have the DCN user guides releases, and it's showing here ACL fan switch features. So this is the kind of relevant doc, and this is, this will evolve if as we populate it with things and more structurally populate it with things. You'll find that you find things very, very, very quickly. So that search was, as fast as I could type, basically. And once you get to the page here, again, you'll see that because this is a printout, I can't really highlight text here. But once I get to this stage, I just double-click the PDF, because this is the actual full PDF file embedded. So if you, when you say print to OneNote, you drag it in here, it adds the full PDF file, prints it out, so that the printing out is about the searchability and finding it fast. Once you find it and go, yeah, this is actually the document that I want to read more about, you can go back to your old, what you're comfortable with. You can open the PDF file, because if you find something and it's, I don't know, on page whatever, you can then go into here and copy out text like you normally would, right, and send it to people. And then what I would typically do is I would copy out the relevant text from the document that I found that's kind of answering the question someone has asked me, or what I need to do. And I'd reply back and say, here's the text, and it came from this document, and here's the link.
Great.
Just
right
a note
now,
on that one.
Yeah.
I think that document is attached twice.
I see it. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So this one can go.
No, it's not.
No, if you double-click on the other one.
You can double-click that, but I don't think you can double-click the one on top.
Yeah.
You can?
This one, yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah,
So
So if you drag it in and you don't print it, it automatically attaches a document to it.
Ah, look at that.
Okay. But sometimes it gets landscape and portrait wrong.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
I saw that, and I used the...
That's been amended here. The landscape and portrait has been amended here by one of the guys in our... See, this is actually a great example of this, because you see with the letters here who's been changing this, right? Yellow, when he was printing, I actually asked, he's a teammate of ours in Amstelveen, and I asked him if he could help print a bunch of stuff that I just needed to get into OneNote. And he said, sure, yeah, no problem. And he kind of struggled with this landscape thing for a little bit, and he just added in what he had learned here. He's like, yep, this is how you address it. If you do it this way, it does it as landscape versus etc. So all of these things, that's the beauty of this. All of these things are kind of living documents, because when we learn things, we amend or update them. Oh, and this is gold. This one here, back. So you have a back to take you where you were. The other thing that, let's say, power user tricks, things that I've been doing lately, is I pin OneNote to my taskbar, and I right-click and open a second one on most days, so that I then have two of them. So I have one that I'm searching and one that I'm documenting things in. So I have my daily that I'm writing into here, which is my internal section, which is also on a share, and I have 3 monitors at home. So I ran into, let's say, as you become dependent on this and use it a lot, what you end up doing is searching for things constantly, reading through, using it as reference. And if you're also using it as kind of your scratch space to document things, that doesn't really work, because you end up doing too much back, forth. So all you do is you open a second instance of it and use that one for writing and the other one for reading, and that one that works fine. There's been a handful of us that have been doing that for several months now.
What I do in the morning is once you mark a section as read and you've read it, it's not bold anymore. But every morning when I come in, I'll see what the changes, or throughout the day I see the changes, and I can see, so-and-so has been working on this, and you get an idea on what people are working on and learn from that. Even if it's just a reference, I don't necessarily dig in and read through all of this, but I know, that person is working in that area. If I have a problem or question, I'll go and look deeper at this. Also, it's very easy as far as scratch space to write something up, throw it in OneNote before I forget, and then I can take time later down the road and make it a more official document or share it out. So it's a very simple way to get started before you forget. Make yourself a note, also share it with a team. And yeah, there's many calls where we're on, and then a coworker will say, "Oh yeah, I remember that problem that we're seeing right here with the customer. It's in OneNote. That's in my section or in another section where I've worked on this, and here's a solution or commands to get around this." And we've also used it for sort of onboarding when new people come in. When I came in, there were so many tips and tricks I learned from everybody, and I put that all in one big file. And then I spent time taking that file and breaking it out and saying, okay, so if you need, this is the process to do this, and broke it all out. So when you have people joining the team, you don't have to reiterate the whole story again. You can kind of point them to that and then use that as your tool to mentor them and bring them onto the team.
Yeah, that's the section I'm showing here. So, and what's become really cool with that is Uta was completely responsible for doing that, because we didn't have such a thing before that. What we had was, I think the best we had was a process tools one, where every time anybody asked me anything, I would write it in OneNote instead of telling them. And then, if I was being nice to them in the beginning, I'd shoot them the page. So here's a, I don't know, let me go back again to Uta's pages here. We'd go getting started. So you get the getting started bit, and you go, oh yeah, you need to get started, and getting started includes getting connected to OneNote. You can basically go on any page in here and say email page. And then it creates a mail. This is, of course, something that you can configure in OneNote. So I've configured it to say sent from. So I've even gotten into the habit of basically everything I do in OneNote first, and then hit send on the mail, because the formatting is all consistent because they're all Microsoft products, between Outlook and OneNote.
So Colin,
and by the same yeah. Sorry,
Colin. I think maybe let me ask you this question, because at HP, as you know, we keep on talking about it. One of our problems is that we as a company are not consistent in pretty much anything, including the use of knowledge management tools. And whenever someone asks, do you have this? Of course we have it. We have 5 different copies of it, and we have 20 other ways of doing the same thing. Yep. So maybe if you can take a minute or two from when you were looking at different options of doing it, and then choosing this OneNote to do it, and the options. Let me just go ahead and list them. Right? We have the options, and this is all related to collaboration. So the option is a good old wiki. The option, of course, is email, which is the worst way of doing it. Then we have SharePoint. Then we have Yammer. Then we have HP Connect, and then we have some other kind of forum. So from your point of view, specifically for what we're talking about, supporting solutions where you need to be able to have referenceable static information, majority of it, but part of it is going to be dynamic and changing. So from that point of view, if you can just provide your point of view, why this way of doing it perhaps makes sense, and if you were doing it, let's say, starting from scratch, why you may still want to do it this way.
Sure. I would summarize it to say that it is the flexibility of a wiki with the robustness of being able to make masses and masses of data in documents, all kinds of format documents, searchable, which wikis search just the text, not the content of attachments. And no wiki that I've seen is designed to somehow take on the attachment, the PDFs, all of the kind of content that we deal with day to day, and search it as well in a shared space. So there's a couple key things there. In a shared space, the collaboration, we've actually played around with it, because this, if you're online, this stuff syncs so quickly that you could actually write in here and say, hey, has anybody heard of this? And it works like Etherpad Plus, not Etherpad Plus, it works like Etherpad, that you can go in and you see somebody typing, more or less. That never really took, because we supplement this, if you will, with Chatter and Yammer. So Chatter is what we're using for most other things, and Yammer, and honestly, it doesn't matter if we have 2 things blinking on the screen, but We use Chatter for Cloud System and for the Helium OpenStack spaces as the kind of collaborative, hey, what do you guys think of this? Or I want to share something I learned kind of thing. And mostly we're moderating that to be able to answer questions from people outside of our team, from the broader group, to make it less formal to engage us, so you don't have to come through a formal case or something. You can just ask a question there. But the key here, if you run through the rest of the ones that you've listed, email is absolutely deadly because everyone has to administer it. Just the sheer act, a dead simple, innocent example of, hey, I found this great PDF document, or here's a PowerPoint from a training, means you send it to, if you take our extended team in the COE space, you've got 60 people, 65 people that you're sending it to. 65 people then have to react, administer that email, decide what they're going to do with it, decide whether or not it's important enough, and they're never going to find it when they're looking for it, or they're going to find it in a massive straight list after 30 seconds of waiting, of searching through their email. So the email is, for me, it's a non-discussion email. It just takes too much time, too much overhead. SharePoints, I'm a little fed up with SharePoints. I didn't really like them in the first place, but I tried a fair amount with SharePoints to use it for something like this. We even tried hosting the OneNote shared volumes on a SharePoint at one point. It created so many temp files that it crashed the SharePoint within 48 hours. So we didn't do that anymore. SharePoint, as far as saving information, the problem is the sync with a SharePoint is fickle. And I'm going to say fickle is a nice way of putting it, because it has changed so many times. I was really happy with what SharePoint did when you had this 2010 local utility from Windows where you could kind of sync to a SharePoint and it would give you this kind of local space that you could search. You still had to search it separately, which I didn't like, but at least you could search all the content of all SharePoints and that you were connected to and do it in a fairly quick fashion. That Groove was what it was called. That kind of went away with 2013, and when they moved to this OneDrive stuff, all of that, let's say the sexiness and the smoothness of the syncing went away. I've tried OneDrive for Business, and I've tried multiple ways to sync to SharePoints to make it somewhat searchable, and I've more or less given up on it, because what you end up with is you also end up with such a myriad of a support matrix for who has what version of SharePoint and who has what version of Outlook in order to try to sync to, that it's everyone is constantly out of sync. So we've moved to we have a SharePoint still for our team for the more kind of formal to the outside world things, but we've been slowly shifting to basically printing those things into OneNote, because that's the only place I look. I mean, if it's also a question of how many places are you going to look? Are you going to look in 17 different places for your information, or do any of these have a chance of consolidating to be kind of the one or maybe a couple places they have to look? So right now I look in OneNote, and that's the prime place to look. The secondary place that I look is in my email, because we're actually experimenting with something here, which I could show you. We're experimenting with it here. We actually had a Cloud System Community PDL. This is the other part of our information streams, right? So Cloud System Community PDL, and at a certain point there were only a handful of people that were on it, but there were lots and lots of good information that was being put on it. So we've actually been playing around with exporting the entire PDL, because it's text, to OneNote page. And yeah, we think this is going to work for 2 or 3 PDLs. We think it's a bit too much to do for tons of PDLs, but it gets us to the utopia in my mind, which is you go to OneNote and you search, and you can then choose. Up in the 2010 timeframe of Office 2010, if I hit the Windows key and I typed, I found a lot of things, but I ended up not finding tons of things locally, including not finding anything in any of my PDFs, which drove me nuts. And that's part of what drove me to putting PDFs in here. I can tell you now that you can solve the PDF part. There's a thing called iFilter.
Cool.
It's a 32-bit, 64-bit story
okay,
where... but
Okay, cool.
You know,
okay, cool. I just go to.
So that wasn't an okay cool for me. I understand.
Yeah.
But the
No, so Colin,
darn.
if it's okay, let me just go to the folks that are on the phone and see if someone's gonna volunteer if they feel, continuing to build this NFV. Well, first off, I think there's a lot of content that you have already populated, non-NFV related, which obviously will have impact for the NFV team as well. But specifically for NFV related stuff, do I have any volunteer who can share, what do they think about it? Because if no one's volunteering, then I'm going to have to pick on someone. Anyone from?
This is John Hines.
Hey, John.
Hi. So, I mean, this is very interesting. I'm not a OneNote user, so I'd have a lot of ramp-up time to try to get up to speed on this. But, Tarek, you know the challenges that we kind of face with storing closure documents and lessons learned documents and other IP that we have for the POCs. And so I know I've mentioned on several occasions, just since I've been on the team, that, it'd be nice if there was some place to put them without putting multiple copies out on the SharePoint and creating like just a lessons learned document. Because right now they're in the individual POC folders. But, when you guys try to find stuff like that, I don't know how easy it is to find. If they were all in like a lessons learned folder, it'd be easier, but now you got duplicate copies. Whereas, this tool here sounds like it's very intriguing. It sounds like it might be a better option and easier for people to find things in. But obviously I would need to learn more about it, and I'd need to go back and talk to Brian about it and get his buy-in.
No, I think it's definitely what you just brought up, because right now we have two problems over there like you talked about. One is where do we store it where, it's there, and the other one is people being able to find it. Right now, because of the folder structure and all, even people who know about it, it's kind of a challenge to find it. So this can certainly help with finding part, but the repository, which is like a long-term repository, and for anyone to be able to find it, that is something we need to work on. Perhaps having, we can't work around having two copies, one on SharePoint, one here. But Colin, curious to your thoughts.
Absolutely is the answer. I mean, if you look at the fact that we're now taking the steps to, let's say, it started off 3 years ago-ish as a static, assembling docs. And as the more that we use it, and I'd say also the more confident we've become in it, because we've tested the scaling of it. We have the matrix library that we have here. This matrix library is like 10 gig, and I've printed multiple 600-700 page PDFs into it, and it just doesn't slow down the indexing. It doesn't slow down the search speed. It's mind-boggling. The docs and Excel sheets, etc. The only thing that you have on a SharePoint, which you don't have here, is a checkout mechanism. So if you on a SharePoint you can say checkout to, and then it's it's kind of a lock on it if there's multiple people changing it. So you have here you don't have that. What you have is you have kind of two extremes. One extreme is you can just basically anything that you embed in here, it will now be found if you search for it. But if you want to edit it, you just double click. It opens it. It's that fast, by the way. Boom, it opens it. And then once it's open and you say, okay, I'm going to do change XYZ, you close it, and it simply says, do you want to update? And the answer is yes, and it will save it back out to the shared OneNote. So it's modifying things, changing them, etc. What you then will have is you'll have, there is a record of who modified it when. You go over here to the right.
Oh,
you'll
that's
see
the wiki part.
You see the initials. The who. It's kind of a mix of many other things, right? I've been pretty heavily into the wiki from Confluence for the past, I'd say past 4 to 6 months, because Cloud System Engineering is using Wiki for everything, and they've created field sections that we kind of work together with them on. And I see, I start to look at the planning type of things, and especially a good example is we have a meeting that we plan every couple of weeks, and we are bouncing around agenda topics, etc. That kind of stuff works really well on a wiki, but it could work equally well here. If we didn't have a wiki, I would say technically as a tool this could serve the same thing, because you can basically, we do our quarterly travel planning in here, and it's just an Excel sheet that everybody in the team can access, and they double-click, open it up, add what they want to travel, and save. And then it's available to everyone in the team and our management immediately.
So Colin, let me just go to one or two more people.
Sure, please.
And maybe, Subbu, let me ask you first, because you have a unique thing that, GSE, of course, you guys are on HP Prem a lot, but then you're at the customer side as well, where you actually need access to this kind of information.
Yes.
So do you think it's something? Well, let me just get your thoughts on it.
Yes, definitely. The searchability of this thing looks quite promising, and I will definitely try it out. Internally, we have been using HP Drive, which really didn't stand up to the promise it made. I generally wanted something, especially when I'll give you a real-time example. Two of our guys are right now in Dallas in a lab where they don't have proper HP net access. I also wanted things to be available on their phone, specifically documents, and that is the reason we went for HP Drive. Needless to say, we didn't find it very good when we actually needed it. But I think this
Subbu, just taking a minute over there. So why phone? Why not laptop? Wouldn't you have access to your laptop in your?
There is a ergonomic problem there. The problem is in many data centers where our guys work, you don't even have a place to sit. So keeping a laptop is a problem.
Gotcha. Okay.
So there is a practical problem in using a laptop in case you are trying to use it.
Right.
So phone is very, very handy. You find a issue, you can actually read it out right there and try out something. So, but this looks very, very good. In fact, especially the searchability part, and we'll definitely try it out.
And I'm looking at the so Subbu, I can work with you offline, and then we'll figure out. So I've been populating this NFV library a little bit, but let's work on it. That how do we prioritize? What should we put in there so you can use it earlier?
I'm already deep into this thing. I'm trying to figure out things, and this looks quite good actually. Thanks, Colin, for working on this. And means we have internally tried a hell lot of things. The internal wiki pages, we have tried everything. Main problem we always had is the searchability. We had documents, but people didn't get it when they want, and that was the issue.
And let's see who else and I think I'm imagining. Karthik, if I pick on you, what do you think? First, why don't you give your thoughts, and then I actually was curious if someone in a support role was able to join, but it doesn't seem like.
Yes, Tariq. Generally, what we are facing on XCG issues, which we see, right? So predominantly, it may replicate in different environments. So it was really difficult to coordinate if some other environment facing the same issue, even we face the same issue when we are installing things. So in this one point where I can just search and you can get the details what they have already resolved on what front and what are the steps they have taken care. So that will really help us.
That will help us. So I think what it seems like first off is that we want to ensure that first, people know that resources like this is available. So I think, we'll once the 2.0 GA has happened, we'll try to either have another of the sessions or something like that, that they know that this is available. But then the other part is that right now, it's a very controlled access update. What I think, that the way Colin went through, that every engineer had their own page where they can add whatever they're wanting, and then we quote unquote curate that information and make it available. So number one, it's searchable by others, like you just said. That would be awesome. And then, move it into a first unstructured, and then we curate it and make it structured. So I'm hearing you say that that kind of thing is going to be helpful. And anyone else who can share their thoughts in the last minute or two that we have? No? I see. Gyani, are you able to get back on?
Tariq, is there any way we can maintain the versioning of things, of documents?
Versioning, that's the thing. The versioning of the document is only maintained by just going in and either updating it. So OneNote by itself keeps a copy or two, like Colin was talking about, but that takes a lot of room. But versioning, you're going to have to keep it outside of it. So like Colin showed for the cloud system, for each version of the released product, there's a separate set of documents. You just create another set of sections that kind of go through it.
Okay, got it.
So what in NFV, what I ended up doing is, and Colin, if you don't mind going to the NFV one and NFV system, if you go there. So we can show folks how NFV library is organized. So if you go to NFV system and you look at the right, so all of these documents that we have put in, they're, a separate version has separate set of documents that are out there. So when you search for something, it'll bring up the appropriate one.
Yeah, understood, Tariq.
Yeah. So I know we are over the time. Colin and COE team really appreciate you getting on the phone and spending this time to show and walk us through. So any closing comments before we drop off?
Excuse me. So my closing comments would be that if you see a need, because we've seen naturally that we have kind of a need for a COE internal space that we can use as an incubation that isn't necessarily blasted out to the entire world. And that's where we kind of give things form before putting them out in the library that everyone in HP can access. That's something that we could easily create. I mean, we have plenty of space, and we've done this for some years to figure out how it is and isn't working. So we could easily do something similar for the NFE space if you wanted to use it more or less as a scratch space to play around with in order to figure out what does and doesn't work, and that you then had that available as we have the COE internal, have that available to everyone to generate content and have a handful of people that kind of administer and maintain the structure to put it into the library format. That would be easy to do. And if you get to the point where you have, if Subbu, you had said that you might want to take a look at how you had a particular body of stuff to put it in, or John, if you get to that point and you are looking at that with Tariq and you say, well, really like to have some experience of myself or Uta or somebody who's been doing this for a long time, just tap whichever one of us you see on link, and we're happy to kind of join in and go look at it together with you.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Colin, appreciate it. And for the Scratch library that you were talking about,
yep,
absolutely. Please, I can connect with you offline, but yes, we would definitely love to have that.
Okay, I will take care of that. Do you have a PDL or a couple of PDLs that you would want me to use for the ACL for that?
Yeah. So let me connect with you offline on that. I'll let you know.
Yep. Okay. Just shoot me a message with who you'd like to start with on the ACL for it, and I'll just create it.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
Folks, again, thank you very much, and I'm actually, as you have noticed, I've already started using it, and let's hope others can start using it and we get some good benefit out of it. So thanks again.
Yep.